Once you start looking for it, you'll never stop seeing it. In Final Fantasy XIV, there are characters called Archons and Aeons. In Persona 5, one of the bosses that you face is named Yaldabaoth. A mech in Xenoblade Chronicles 1 shares the same name. In Persona 3 Reload, Tartarus has monad doors you can enter. How many RPGs have you played where the central plot turns on some hidden knowledge about the secret nature of the universe? How many times have you seen a character with the title Demiurge? These names, these character archetypes and ideas, show up again and again, going back as far as the 1983 game Archon, one of the first video games ever made by EA. But these themes and ideas are older than that. Much, much older. Just outside the village of Nag Hammadi, a man named Muhammad al-Samam is digging for fertilizer at a cliffside when something catches his eye. It's an earthenware jar in a pile of rubble. Part of the cliff had recently collapsed, revealing something long hidden. Al-Samam opens one of these jars and discovers it's full of papyrus. Ancient, brittle, text written in a language he can't read. He asks a friend what the documents are, and they tell him to leave it alone. Al-Samam and his family are Muslim, and the ancient papyrus, his friend says, is Coptic. It's for the Christians. That night, his mother burns some of the pages in their stove to bake bread. Years before this, Muhammad's father had been killed by a man from a neighboring tribe, and shortly after discovering these ancient texts, he settled the blood feud by, in his own words, cutting out the man's heart and eating it. He was imprisoned for the murder, and when he got out, he discovered that the library of texts he had unearthed had all either been taken by European and Egyptian archaeologists or burned by his mother to keep their house warm. Only one volume remained, which Muhammad sold for 11 Egyptian pounds. At today's exchange rate, that's about 25 cents. A BBC documentary crew caught up with him in the 1980s to ask him if he had any regrets regarding how the texts were handled. Al-Samam said, and I quote, "I don't give a damn about them." What Al-Samam unearthed is now known as the Nag Hammadi Codex, the oldest and most comprehensive collection of Gnostic writings ever discovered. The Nag Hammadi texts revolutionized scholars' understanding of the religious landscape of the ancient Near East, changed forever how we understand the development of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and yes, it even influenced Final Fantasy, Persona, and Elden Ring. Gnosticism, like every religion, tells a story. It's a story of unity in the past, a tragic separation in the present, and the hope of future reunification. The basic outline goes like this. In the beginning, there was one. Some refer to this one as God, others as the parent, or by the Greek word bithos, meaning the depth. From this unity flowed a host of spiritual beings. One of these beings, often going by the name Sophia, meaning wisdom, commits a sin. The nature of this sin is hazy. Some accounts say she tried to pierce the barrier between herself and the unknowable depths of God. Others say she attempted to create life on her own, apart from God. Whatever the case, she was cast out from the presence of God, her connection to the divine severed completely. Her grief and anguish at this separation were so powerful they erupted into what we now know as matter and soul, as well as a new being referred to in the Gnostic texts as Yaldabaoth, or the Demiurge. It is the Demiurge who takes the raw material of matter and soul and crafts the world in which we live. It's a creation story, but not like the one in Genesis where a loving God crafts the material universe out of a desire to share his love with his creation. To the Gnostics, the world we inhabit, our bodies, the soil beneath our feet, everything around us, is the product of unimaginable grief, suffering, and separation. a material prison for human beings who still contain within themselves a spark of their divine origins, a spark that longs to be free. The word gnosis means knowledge in Greek, specifically hidden spiritual knowledge of mankind's origins, insight into our divine heritage, which can free the divine spark from the earthly prison built by the demiurge. This faith, this cult, this collection of beliefs flourished in the early centuries of the Common Era, but its days were cut short. Gnostics were branded as heretics by the early Christian church, their places of worship and study destroyed, their texts burned, their priests and preachers run out of town or killed. This in and of itself is not unique. The story of early Christianity is the story of a great sorting, a story of councils and debates, of the shuffling together of a huge number of disparate practices, beliefs, and confessions into what became, more or less, a standardized faith by the 5th century. By the end of this process, there were very few people left who would call themselves Gnostic. To this day, there is only one surviving Gnostic faith, the religion of Mandaism, practiced by a dwindling population mostly situated in remote quarters of Iran and Iraq. But while the institutional religion of the Gnostics could not survive the withering assault levied against it in those early centuries, their ideas lived on. Throughout the Byzantine Empire, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, and even into the 21st century, Gnostic conceptions of fate, human origins, and the nature of the universe turned up in unexpected corners. The label Gnostic was a popular one thrown around during the religious wars of the medieval period, a useful brand if you wanted to turn the power of the Catholic Church against someone. Mystical strains of Islam and Judaism incorporated Gnostic imagery and metaphor into poetic interpretations of their faith in God. In the early 20th century, thinkers like Carl Jung and writers like Jorge Luis Borges referenced it. Aleister Crowley folded Gnosticism into his practice of thelema and thus inspired every Western esoteric occultist who walked in his footsteps. It's this last area of influence, magic and the occult, which contributed most to the spread of Gnostic ideas in worldwide popular culture. This has less to do with some imagined cabal of Hollywood Satanist sickos leaving a breadcrumb trail of their heretical beliefs for conspiracy theorists to uncover, and more to do with the fact that Gnosticism is just a damn good story. Gnostic conceptions of the origins of the world and the nature of humanity fit neatly into a certain kind of fiction. It is a dramatic and compelling reshaping of familiar ideas that hints at a grand spiritual conspiracy, a dark mythic undercurrent beneath everything we think is so familiar. The fall from grace, the great amnesia that overtakes humanity, the breaking of psychic chains and the escape from captivity, it maps almost one-to-one onto so many of our most beloved stories. Think Star Wars, think David Lynch, think Lord of the Rings. It does what the best conspiracy theories do. It says to the listener that all of their suspicions and hunches were correct all along. If you have ever felt like a stranger in this world, if you have ever felt that there is some hidden truth behind the veil that you just can't grasp, you're right. Gnosticism's plethora of arcane-sounding proper nouns doesn't hurt either. Who wouldn't want to fight the demiurge? Who wouldn't want to earn the title of Archon by feats of strength and prowess? Spending a weekend night raiding the tomb of the blind god Samael, buddy, sign me the hell up. It solves the fantasy writer's most vexing problem, coming up with cool names for stuff. But beyond this, Gnosticism resonates in fiction for a deeper reason too. Several years ago, I worked for an organization that provided services and support for survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. We had a hotline people could call for help and a shelter where they could stay if their safety was in danger. One summer, the state where I lived suffered some of the worst wildfires on record. You probably saw it on the news. The air was nearly unbreathable for days on end. The sky turned a terrifying red-orange color as the smoke blocked out the sun. There was so much ash in the air that it covered the ground like snow. It felt like the end of the world. But I worked through it. We all did. The crises didn't stop, not even for a natural disaster. I have a distinct memory of one day where, after hours spent trying to get a client safe, navigating hospitals, police stations, and motels with crying children in the back seat while the smoke made our eyes water and the ash got into our hair and underneath our masks, I was finally able to sit alone in my car for a moment. I started crying, something I hadn't done for almost a decade. I sat and watched the ash fall on my windshield for a few minutes and tried to get my bearings. I was raised Christian. My father is a pastor. I almost was one too. But as I sat in my car, I remember thinking, I don't know if God is real, but I think the devil might be. Perhaps that's why these ideas, these names, these themes hold relevance for us still today in the 21st century. Even a cursory glance at the state of the world reveals contradictions and conflicts so deeply embedded they seem to be the creation of some malicious intelligence. A brief sweep of world history reveals our planet to be a place where too often the greedy and uncaring die happy in their beds, surrounded by wealth and comfort, while the victims of their abuses get no justice. Who else would make a world like this, other than some creator who is just as deeply fallen and flawed as we are? It says something that these ideas were just as intoxicating 2,000 years ago as they are now. The men and women who joined this ancient cult were not that different from you and me. They had jobs and families, pressures, responsibilities, dreams, disappointments. They were subject to injustice, war, sickness, and heartbreak. They believed in all of this because it made sense to them. It reflected some deeply felt truth about the world in which they lived. Of all the recent games to gesture towards Gnosticism or incorporate its ideas, Elden Ring by Japanese developer From Software stands out as a prime example. The cosmology of the world is layered and mysterious. There are demigods and cosmic powers, religions and cults within those religions, and a general sense that the reason for all the pain and suffering in the lands between lies with the very roots of its creation. Sometime in the distant, long-forgotten past, there was a sin, a separation. What this sin was is never elucidated. Characters reference a seduction, a betrayal, a former unity that shattered into individual wills. The gnosis of Elden Ring's world is a mystery, and attaining that secret knowledge, uncovering the world's occult, shadowy origins, is a major driver of the story's action. The tarnished still bear the grace of gold, a divine spark within themselves that lets them challenge the very gods for supremacy and power. One ending in particular sees the accomplishment of the Gnostic vision. If you travel deep below the capital city of Leyndell and accept the flame of chaos, you can melt away the world until everything runs together once more. Unity, separation, and unity again. This ending, while desired by some, horrifies others. Melina, your companion throughout the game, seeing you contemplate taking on the mantle of the Three Fingers, pleads with you to reconsider. She says this:
If you intend to claim the frenzied flame, I ask that you cease. It is not to be meddled with. It is chaos, devouring life and thought unending. However ruined this world has become, however mired in torment and despair, life endures. Births continue. There is beauty in that. Is there not?
The central question of Elden Ring is the central question of Gnosticism. Is the world worth saving? To the Gnostics, the answer is no. Our bodies, the material, physical realm which we inhabit and experience through our senses, is a prison around our true spiritual nature, a world of exile which we must escape. Should everything burn away, nothing of value would be lost. But no matter how compelling this argument might seem, no matter how much of the world's chaos, torment, and despair I see, I can't bring myself to believe in it. When push comes to shove, I'm on Melena's side. Yes, our world, the real, physical world where we live, is full of pain and suffering. But it's also full of beauty and joy. What's more, I think the scale can tip if we want it to, if we work for it. The world might not be a good place, but I believe we can make it better. Thank you for watching.